Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is Laura.
Hi YouTube.
Laura has decided to come drink with me, and today we're going to talk about beer.
Kathy has the right glassware for her beer. I drink my beer out of mason jars, so this is quite the civilized experience that I'm having here inside. Cheers.
And of course, because we're dorks, we have to untap this.
Ooh. I am untapping that this untapped checking is going on YouTube, so this is a very meta experience right now. Drink responsibly.
Yes, please do drink responsibly.
I'm a much bigger fan of quantity over quantity, quantity of flavors over quantity of alcohol consumed. So, with only two of us, we're not going to get through too many, but getting a group of people together and doing like a bottle share is a really super fun way to just get to try all of the things, and then you know what you like. And it's also a really good way to try stuff that you wouldn't necessarily go for, that you might be surprised by, because like a bottle this big is a lot to commit to.
Yeah, definitely
for an evening for yourself.
Yeah. Whereas if you're only having half or a third of a bottle, you can try it, and if you don't like it, you don't have to drink that much. It's great.
Although I'm terrible for hardly ever buying the same beer. I need something new.
Must try all of the things.
Yes.
Yeah. That's mostly the reason why I got some of the ones that I have. I bought based on either I was trying to find a beer from a different country for this video right now, or I thought the label was really cool, or it seemed like a type of beer that I would enjoy.
And for people that think they don't like beer, it's like saying you don't like vegetables when really, you might just not like tomatoes, but other things are okay. There's so many different styles of beer that probably something out there for you. So if you think beer's really bitter, try a stout or a porter that are really a lot sweeter. Or if you are a big spirits fan, try a barrel aged something or other. I really like Untapped because it gave me beer drinking confidence, actually. I was kind of I like porters.
I've always been I like ales. I don't really like lagers. And for the longest time, that's all I really thought there was for beer. It was either light beer or dark beer, and there wasn't really anything else besides Guinness, which is just darker beer. Or at least that's what I thought at the time.
Yeah. So Untapped has been really cool because it's been really encouraging to try new things and discover, that I do, I thought that I didn't like IPAs, but I actually like English IPAs. I don't like West Coast IPAs. Flights are another really great way to do that, because then you get to try again and try all the things, but experiment with trying stuff that you might not necessarily like, and they're cheap. But yeah, when I first got Untapped, I would be this beer is nice, and I was really afraid of talking about how I didn't know the lingo, and I was afraid to even take up space on the app with my opinion because I didn't have the right words. And then I was well, just bullshit it.
Yeah, exactly. A really good way to do that is just to read the side of the label and be oh, this label says it has hints of cinnamon and whatever. I'll just talk around those lines, or talk about how I can't taste that whatsoever and I think the label's lying. Or yeah, it's always good to have that little bit of background knowledge, so to speak, to just kind of bring it to it and be okay, well, I agree with the label, or I don't agree with the label, or I don't like this for this reason, or I think this is great for this other reason.
Yeah. I mean, beer doesn't have quite the same sort of snobbiness around it that wine does with sommeliers and the tasting notes, but it's starting to kind of get that way. I think especially because dudes love to explain things in epic detail, and beer and dudes have traditionally been associated with each other forever, that it's a very kind of dude-dominated world. So I just started using my own, using language that I was familiar with. I was well, I don't know the terminology, but I'm just gonna say this tastes like this to me, this has a caramelly kind of note to me. If we listen to our senses, they can tell us a lot of stuff, and that can give us a lot of confidence, to just be okay, I don't know the fancy language, but I know what I know and what I think, and this is what I taste, and this is what I smell.
In the culture of drinking, we're told that mixed drinks are girl drinks, or bitch booze, as was always told to me when I was younger. And I was just okay, well, when I was younger, I liked sweeter things a lot more, so I was okay, yeah, this is fine. I guess I'll just stick to this because this is what I'm culturally supposed to drink, I guess. And it took me a while to actually like beer because like my parents drank lager and I'm not a really big lager fan, so since that was the only foray into like having beer in the house, I was like, I don't really like beer. And then the first time I tried a Guinness was when I first moved to Dublin. I drank the last drag of it, which just don't drink the last bit of Guinness.
Not the best part of the beer.
That's not good. So because of that, I was like, oh, I really, no, I think I'm done with beer. Like, I tried it, don't like it. But I went on a tour a couple of weeks later, and the tour guide was like, no, I bought you a Guinness, you should have it. I was like, sure, I will have your free beer, whatever. And then I told him about my drinking the last dregs the last time. He's like, oh, well, just don't do that, and I'm pretty sure you're going to experience this in a much better way. And I had it. I was like, okay, yeah, no, this is actually good.
I spent a little bit of time in Ireland, and with my family mostly, and I love pub culture over there because my family aren't really big drinkers. My parents pretty much never had alcohol in the house, and so I grew up like never drinking pretty much, and thankfully like didn't tip too far to the other side when I was like, you know, sort of freed from that constraints. But I definitely wasn't like schooled in the fine art of drinking either, you know. And I really like that like just the taste aspect of it is what drinking's all about for me. But also, you know, the taking the edge off part is nice too. And so when we were in Ireland, I could drink like a beer at lunch in the pub with my family and like survive the afternoon, and it was the loveliest thing.
Yeah, nobody blinks an eye when you have a beer with lunch anywhere in the UK or in Ireland, but you do that here and people kind of look at you like you have an issue.
That was an excellent way to start.
Yay! What should we do next?
Maybe we should do the Creek.
I would like to do that.
Okay. Cheers. I describe Lambics as great breakfast beers. There's not a lot of things that I would defer to Europe about, but with beer, they got it going on. Although, to be fair, like...
We're pretty spoiled. I mean, in town we have, 10 breweries?
At least a little bit when I first started with the more craft beers, like, oh, that label is cool.
Yeah.
I still do that with the label, but now at least I know a little bit, like, what the kind of beer is, too.
Oh, yeah. I'll look at the label and be like, that's really cool, and then I'll check the label to see what kind of beer it is, and be like, oh, you're a lager? I'm sorry, I'm probably not going to enjoy you.
Beer developed because it's a way of sanitizing the water.
Yeah, that's definitely the history of it in Edinburgh for sure, and I'm sure lots of other places, but yeah, that was definitely on one of my tours.
Yeah, which is kind of neat because it's like, you know, it's bacteria causing you problems in your water, or it's fermenting your water into this delicious elixir of loveliness that also gets you drunk. But beers would be like, you know, again, like 3 or 4%, and they would be what you would drink instead of water in a long distance relationship, and so when we visit each other, we bring each other beer and from the craft breweries in each other's towns, and quite nice. It's a very nice thing. But when we went to Driftwood recently, the guy was like, oh, do you have any Bellwoods beers with you? Like, I would love to try those, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh yes, I have 3 of them in my fridge that my sweetie brought me, but like you can't have any.
So not for you.
I felt like I had like quite a lot of like indie beer cred.
There's this really great iconic picture of all of these Brewdog beers standing around a guillotine, and they're about to behead Stella Artois. And it's just so funny because Brewdog is a brewery I love from the UK. It is so good. But they have beers that legally they have to serve them in either half pints or a third of a pints, or some that are actually you have to legally sell them as shots because they're 50% alcohol beers, but they don't taste like alcohol whatsoever.
What?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that's served in a shot is called Tactical Nuclear Penguin, I think it's called. They just have amazing names.
It's been a really big trend the last couple of years of IPAs, and everybody just trying to like out IPA each other in like so insanely. It's like blow your face off with all of the hops ever in the universe beer. And I'm like, no one actually wants that, and anyone who says they do is lying. Like
it's like trying to try the hottest pepper. Like
yes,
that's the type of thing it is. People don't want to drink it casually. They'll try it to be like, I did that thing. Yeah. They don't actually casually want to drink that.
Yeah, but I think that trend is finally like moving on, and the style that's moving in is sour beers. Everybody's doing sour beers right now. We can do sour Belgian beers, you can do sour like stouts, and so you can take different styles of beer and sourify them, whereas you can't necessarily do that so much with an IPA. So
yeah, an IPA is a type of beer in itself.
I think it just is going to lead to some really like interesting and cool kind of creations that are just really yummy and refreshing in a night. Like if you are going to try a whole bunch of beers, it can be a really nice palate cleanser too.
Just like, I imagine it would act kind of like having a sorbet. I don't actually dine at fancy dining establishments. I'm too busy spending my money on beer.
But yeah, totally. I think a very similar idea. Like that sour taste is just very like cleansing for the whole palate.
Apparently, this driftwood is really dangerous because it does not taste strong whatsoever, and then it's 10%. So you stand up and you're like, oh, hello, world. Apparently, things are happening.
I'm feeling that.
Yeah.
What is the style of that one?
It's a strong golden ale, which I don't really know what that means. And Satan is in this beer. It says right on the label.
Oh,
so,
okay.
You know, that's the thing. So now we're trying the Son of the Morning by Driftwood, which is the one that has Satan in it. So this should be good times.
Woo.
Cheers.
To the devil. This style of beer is a Belgian triple. So it basically means that it's the number of times that the beer is fermented. So they'll add more sugar and re-ferment it. It's amazing that like Belgium is not a very big country, and there's so many different styles of beer that come out of it. My sweetie and I, we like to play this, what would we do if we won the lottery game? Because, you know, that's way more fun than actually trying to figure out your life. So, you know, we like to talk about like where we would go. Okay, so definitely like the UK. And definitely, obviously, Belgium. Beer.
Yeah, there's so much beer to drink, and you can do that in the pub, so it doesn't matter if it's overcast.
That's true. That's very true, yes.
I mean, it is nice to sit on a patio every once in a while, but...
It's interesting the way that dudes treat me at the beer store. I can walk into a liquor store and peruse the wine aisles, and I'm totally like left alone, left to my own defenses, and that's the section where I actually like need more help. But the beer section, like I know what I'm doing when it comes to beer, and B, like I like to look at all the things, and especially now like the craft beer section in beer stores is like an entire wall.
We're very
more.
spoiled.
You know, of course I'm going to be standing there for a while, like taking my time and taking it all in and thinking about what I've had and thinking about what badges I'm working on for Untapped. And
you were way more dedicated to Untapped than me. I'm just like, I will say that I'm drinking this beer, but I don't like specifically go after certain beers to get certain badges. I'm just like, ooh, I got a badge. Yay for me.
Often within the first like 5 seconds of me being in the craft beer section, there's a dude that works there like pouncing on me. You know, I get that like customer service is a thing, and I just find it like mildly insulting because it's like it's such a contrast compared to when I shop in other sections of the store. Like, oh, she must be lost, or she must be like picking something up for her boyfriend and like need help, and it's like, no. So that's always a little bit frustrating to me. Sometimes, you know, I will ask for their opinion on something, or just ask them what their favorite beer is, and oftentimes that, you know, results in me getting a really good recommendation on something that I haven't tried before. So, you know, I'm not trying to be like snotty about it, or like I never want to talk to dudes about beer, but it's just that like that it gives me the feeling that they think that I don't know what I'm doing, or that that's not a section that I belong in, whereas that's like almost the only section I almost ever want to be in, and I want to be there to like linger and drool, and like, you know, I'm not gonna go in and buy like 50 beers in a day, even though I could easily. So it's like prioritizing and like, what do I want, and what flavors am I after, and you know, what's new, and so it would just be nice to sort of be treated
as though you know what you're doing.
Yeah, like I have a right to be there, basically. So I really like spaces where I can drink with women and talk about beer with women and like empower myself and empower each other in like talking about it. And the response has been really good from it too. Like I've actually gotten response from men and women just being like, oh hey, like thanks for telling me about that beer, I didn't know it existed, or I really like that one too, or you know, like what have you. So it's, you know, it's been really cool and given me a lot more confidence. I am a beer person, you know. I don't usually like to tell people about my interests, because like even if I'm interested in it, there's this like, we live in this kind of like expert culture where it's like, if you're like, oh yeah, like I like flowers, and they're like, oh well, what do you know about flowers?
Yeah,
tell me everything, you know. And it's like, I like the pink ones.
Yeah, one of my favorite tweets about that type of expert culture is a girl particularly saying that they like gaming, and then somebody being like, yeah, well what's Mario's inseam? Like,
yeah,
you don't need to know everything about a thing to like a thing.
Yeah.
There are many things that I love that I don't know everything about.
And that's okay, and it's, you know, I think the more there is to learn about stuff, the more likely you are to like it for longer. And as I explore different styles of beer, you know, the next thing I'm kind of getting into is like really good aging beer, and that's something that I haven't gotten into yet, you know. It's like, I'm not that organized in my life to like buy beers 3 years in advance and age them, but my sweetheart is, so you know, that's something that I can start getting into, and then you know, from there, like brewing my own beer maybe, and you know, if I already knew everything about everything, then that wouldn't be any fun.
Exactly, it would become sort of boring, or you would be that person that knew everything about the thing, and you would have to endlessly talk about that one thing, when really we have many different interests in life.
I have seen some pretty like bad examples of sexism within the beer industry, where it's just like, we know that women exist in the industry. I know that there are women brewers, but you don't hear about them often, and so it would just be like a shame for beer culture to become like gamer culture, where it just gets taken over by the dudes and the women and it get ignored. Sexist beer names, like, it's like, no, like we drink beer too, and we don't appreciate that shit, so you can just stop. Like, it's not a boys club, it's for everybody. And
I have a theory that beer culture is a lot easier to get into for just humans in general, because one, there are so many different types. Two, they're much less expensive than getting into wine culture. Like, people that are like skilled in wine culture, like I have a friend right now who's taking her W sets, which is like a wine tasting and knowing thing, basically like sommelier type of work, and it's really difficult to get all of those different types of things in order, whereas beer, like, you rock up, you go, yeah, I really like IPAs, and you're kind of de facto an expert in them, because you have tried them and you like them and you know what you personally like, and because you know what you personally like, you can be like, oh yeah, that one, and that one are good, these ones are okay if you want something a little bit more bitter. And it's just that easy. Totally. Whereas wine, it's financially hard to know your wine.
You know, it's expensive even to experiment.
Exactly. It's a really big commitment to buy a $30 bottle of wine, which is like the same amount of liquid that comes in one of these beer bottles, but is 6 times more expensive.
These are all amazing beers, and I think the most expensive one was like $8.
Probably,
and you can get like, you know, really like, you know, super fancy, all of the things, you know, barrel aged and shotgunned around the sun or whatever beers, like, and that's only gonna run you $30, you know, like there's no, like, it's not like wine where there's like thousands of dollars on one bottle of wine. Like, I don't think that exists in beer culture, and that may be because, like, again, like, beer is more of like a working class, like farming class kind of a thing, like that's sort of its roots, maybe, that it doesn't have that like same sort of attitude around it, whereas I think wine was the more like upper echelons.
Yeah, and beer is, it's not, I won't say it's less labor intensive, because there's a lot of labor that goes into it, but it's less like time intensive. So like Scotch is at least 3 years and a day in the barrel. Like that's what Scotch is. It had Scotch that was older than I was at the time that I was drinking it, that type of thing. So it's less time intensive, so it costs less to produce beer, because you don't have to have the storing facilities, you don't have to age it for as long, that type of thing. So I think the raw ingredients too, right? Like barley
is a lot easier to grow than like wine grapes are.
Oh yeah,
You know, it's
especially
a lot less finicky.
Yeah, if you have a terrible crop one year, you just don't get to make wine that year. It's so funny that, yeah, like a woman that loves scotch is like that weird other girl stereotype that you'll see in a lot of fiction these days. Like, oh yeah, she's a girl, but she's not like the other girls. She's cool. Misogynistic culture. Yeah.
Oh god. Yeah. And I worry about being perceived as that girl with my beer drinking too, where I'm like, I don't drink beer for like dude points.
Everybody is freaking different, and not everybody conforms to one side of this or the other.
Yeah, and not all girls like the same things, and not all boys like the same things. Weird.
Yay. Gender politics and beer.
Really basic understandings of the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, brewing is definitely something that I would like to get into more. And there's this really awesome book that a friend of mine has that I borrowed for a while that's all about herbal and medicinal beers. And so it talks a lot about monk culture, and monks, made a lot of beer. They were famous for it, and they were also like, because they lived in these sort of like little self-sufficient communities, they grew a lot of their own medicinal herbs. They really knew like the herbal properties, the medicinal properties of herbs, and they added them to beer, which is brilliant because in the fermentation process it releases, just really like potentizes and makes more easily absorbed by the body all of the like medicinal properties of herbs. And so gruits are part of that tradition where they're like super like herbal infused beers. So one of my passions is like blending herbs and medicine. I do that with, or like herbs and food, medicine and food. I do that with my chocolate. I just think that would be like a really cool thing to be like here's a legitimately medicinal beer. Like here's a beer that has like raspberry leaf brewed right into it, and it will help you with your menstrual cramps, and it tastes like chocolate. Like that
would be a world class item. Like that would sell so well.
And just like we have this idea that it's like that it's a vice, that like that it's and alcohol is like technically a drug.
And it can definitely be a vice, but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be, and I think that we can alleviate a lot of our guilt around things if we know that they're good for us. And
so the camera stopped while we were talking mid-sentence. We have a new beer now.
Yay! It smells amazing. A documentary came out recently on CBC maybe about binge drinking and women specifically, and I think that like so much of our culture really encourages binge drinking, because children are kept away from alcohol and shielded from it as something like that only grown-ups can handle, and it's so different than it is over in Europe, and I think that really like contributes to it a lot.
I was one of those people that I didn't drink until after I turned the legal drinking age, and that's partly because I'm a stickler for rules, but also it was partly because I had a car and I would drive around the people that were doing the things and just make sure that they were okay while they were doing the things.
I had one friend in high school whose parents were like the cool parents, and they were cool in that they let us come and drink at their house, but they were also cool in that they like looked after us. My parents, if they known, probably would have been like, those people are morally decrepit, but like they were the best parents in the neighborhood, really.
Yeah, they'd rather you drank there under like a safe place instead of drank in the middle of nowhere with no way to get home, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've never been like a drink to get drunk type of person. I've drank and I've become drunk.
Yeah.
But I've never, that's never
been
my
effect.
goal.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
It's never been my goal to just get obliterated and not remember what I did the previous night.
Sometimes, like a numbing is definitely helpful, and I think that's, another reason why I'm helpful, that I've discovered as much as I have about beers is I know what style to look for when I want like a 10% beer that I'm gonna drink and fall asleep because I don't want to think that night. Like, you know, I appreciate that and appreciate that that exists and that I have access to it.
Like every time I walk into that liquor store close to here, I'm like, are you smiling really nicely because you recognize me, or are you smiling just because that's how you smile at everybody? I'm wondering if it's because you recognize me, because I'm always here being like, I'm just looking for beer for a project.
A project called Tasting Delicious Beer.
Exactly. But also, like, I have gone in on a few different occasions being like, I'm looking for a specific type of beer to fit whatever I'm doing, whether it being like me having a beer with my book and I want it to fit the theme of the book.
Yeah.
Because I do that, or like these types of videos.
Should we eat cupcakes?
Yeah. Laura bought cupcakes because Laura is amazing. This was a wonderful choice. It's very well with its chocolate border.
What was your experience? Because I know you went to the Great Canadian Beer Festival. Did you enjoy it? Like,
I enjoyed it. The thing about a beer festival of that magnitude, like, it was such a big festival that even though the person I went with and I decided we're gonna try as many beers as possible, it wasn't possible to try all of them. Like, the samples that you get are like a 2-ounce sample, and we would each get a different sample from the same brewery and then like try one of each other's samples. So like my Untapped that day was wonderful, and like Laura thought I had a problem. She's like, "Are you okay?" And like, I'm just at a beer festival. It's fine.
I didn't see the venue check-in at first, so I was like, "Shit, Kathy, you just checked into like 6 beers in half an hour. What's going on?"
Yeah, exactly. It's like, don't worry, it's a ½ ounce each or an ounce each. It's okay. I think we tried 44 beer each that day, and like 44 ounces is not a lot technically, but when you're mixing different types of beer, it is a lot. It gets to a point where you're like, yes, that tasted like beer. And I liked it because I'm a little bit drunk. Laura's big on Twitter. She's pretty amazing, so I'll put her Twitter in the doobly-doo. That's where it goes.
I don't know about big on Twitter. I'm on Twitter.
You're on Twitter. You're on Twitter and you're always on Twitter, so that's the easiest way to find Laura. Sometimes I'm like, should I text Laura or should I tweet Laura? Because tweeting Laura gets better results.
It's true.
It's easier.
But I met my wife on Twitter, so really, like, I can't argue with the results that being on Twitter all the time provides.
See, Twitter's a thing that Laura does a lot. We can still drink, but anything we say after this point is going to be, like, terribly slurred.
I think so, yeah. I'm getting into the, like, I don't have full control over my mouth.
I don't know. I guess I'm going to say words, but I don't know if I want them to be on the internet.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming to drink with me.
Oh, my pleasure.
Excellent. Thank you for all your expertise on all of the beer. Because I'm like, I just like beer, I'm gonna drink the beer, and you're like, I know the history of beer. I'm like, that's great. That's a perfect way to learn, really.
Yeah. Hands on.
So if you enjoyed Laura's shenanigans on this episode, you should follow her on Twitter. Link is in the doobly-doo. If you have any thoughts on anything we said in this video, whatever makes it into this video about beer, you should comment below. And on your way down, you should hit the subscribe button. And I'm not gonna be as creepy as my last video. Now you're all gonna look at my last video and be like, what creepy thing did she do? Bye, YouTube.
Bye!